All right, guys, thanks for joining. We are continuing chapter six, configuring basic switch management. In this lab, we're just covering, securing user access with external remote authentication. Um, and we're going to do this by doing a lab using Radius on a Windows server and pair of Cisco switches included going through a ISP router. Okay. Guys, this is just a lab. Um, please don't be, don't compare this to the real world. This is just for understanding. Just for you to get basics of networking, how things work. Please do not take it too literal. Um, these are not how some networks are set up. Just want to put that disclaimer out there. I know I've had questions in the past about my labs being, uh, hey, this is not how the real world works. This is all for you to make sense of it. You'll see the same diagrams close to it within Cisco Press books, CompTIA books, Fortinet books. Every network is different. So just want to put it out there. Don't be too literal. Just get the concept of it that traffic is traveling to meet its destination. What's the goal to learn here, right? What do I need to learn here? So just want to put that disclaimer out there. So let's move on. So we have our Windows server, we have our ISP router. Let's go ahead and configure the networks that we want and add some of the devices. Okay. So we have our ISP router, like I said. We're going to add our switches. The switches are going to represent the different sites, right? We're going to just add one switch, right? And we're going to add it behind the router. And there we go. Okay, excellent. We're just going to do one switch. There we go. And basically what's going to happen is this switch is going to represent a branch, a site, right? Maybe headquarters, right? And the Windows server is behind a network that sits at maybe at a data center. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and configure some networks. Okay. So we have ISP1 booted up, ready to go. Let's give it a host name. Let's get it. Let's get those routes in there. Let's get a couple of basic switch configuration set up, right? So it can perform its function, right? Is routing packets, right, to and from the source to the destination. So let's put in the host name, ISP1. There we go. All right, so we got ISP1, and let me turn this down, guys. So if I make an error, you guys are not hearing that big buzzing sound. All right, so we got that. Let's go into the interface, right? Because of course, within a actual router, right, each interface is a layer 3 boundary. Okay. Um, Unlike a switch where all interfaces are within the same broadcast domain. Okay. All right. So let's do 0, 0. Let's configure that network first. That network we have here, the IP address is 10.4.6.1, right? That's the IP address we're going to assign to our router, okay? And the IP address we're going to assign to our server is .25 within that same subnet, okay? So we'll do no shut. And now let's go ahead um, and configure the LAN network, right? The reason why I had to do a no shut is because by default, out of the box, interfaces on a Cisco router are administratively shut down out of the box. Okay. All right. So now let's add in our network. We'll give it a 6 dot. We'll do a right 6.4, right? Dot 6 dot oops 6.4.6.2. Well, 1, I'm sorry. 5, 5, 5. Oh, there we go. And let's do a no show. There we go. All right, so we got that set up. We got that good to go, right? I trust that my I trust that my configuration was good, but we always need to verify, right? Um, when I worked at several jobs before, a lot of the um great men and women that I worked with that were in the military, active duty, or in the civilian world, they always would preach to me, and I'm glad they shared it with me, is trust but verify. You could trust what you did is right, but you always want to verify behind yourself as well. So let's see if routes are active. Excellent, excellent. So we see routes are active, and let's make sure those interfaces are up, right? Layer 1 and layer 2. Awesome, right? So status is telling us layer 1 within this table, and protocol is telling us layer 2 is up. So we're good to go, right? And of course, we have our layer 3 identification number set. So let's go ahead, let's move on, and let's go ahead and keep going. Okay, so let's go ahead and just for good measure, let's add the network just in case so you guys can keep up, right? Some good housekeeping. There we go. All right. So we got the network added, right? And we'll configure the switch later on. Let's go ahead and do the hard stuff. Let's go ahead and do the server, okay? Because there's a couple of things we need to do on the server, right? Before we even configure AAA on the switch, okay? All right. So let's go ahead and log in, all right? Logging into my Cisco server. I'm sorry, my Windows server. Sorry, guys, it's 9 a.m. While I'm recording this. So if I misspeak, say some of the wrong things, please forgive me. All right. So we have that set. Let's go ahead and give it a IP address. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So let's give it an IP. And let's do it 10.4.6.25, right? And we put it in a /24 network, okay? And when I say /24, I am um, I am referencing the subnet mask, right, or the solder notation for the network, right, for the 10.4.6 network, okay? We're gonna make the DNS server, right? This server. We're not going to configure DNS, but we are just going to put it in this configuration anyway, right? Awesome, right? So what I love that Windows does is that we get this verification. Whenever we have a new connection, it's going to pop up and say, hey, networks two is popped up, right? This is a new network. It's telling us that we want to find PC devices, automatically connect, I recommend you do this on home and work networks, right? We'll just go ahead and say yes, right? There's some cybersecurity experts that can possibly give recommendations on maybe there's some vulnerabilities within just that. But that's not what we're here to cover, right? But just keep in mind what that does and what that is, right? Even though we got that verification, let's verify that we can ping our gateway. Okay. So we'll do a ping 10.4.6.1. Awesome. We have pings, right? So I'm happy, right? Let's go ahead and let's move on. So now our Windows server, right? Typically, whenever you open Windows Server, I'm using Windows Server 2012. That version will go ahead and pop up Server Manager whenever you log in. I love this dashboard. The dashboard is going to show us the current roles the roles and server groups that are associated and installed on this server. The current role that we only have now is file and storage services, right? And the servers and server groups that we have are local server, and of course, all servers that are set. So let's add some roles, right? particularly to what all that we just need for this leg, right? So we are going to go ahead and add roles and features. We're going to go through the wizard, right? Right? And we're going to do a role-based and feature-based installation. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and select a server from this pool. We're going to select this one, right? And then we are going to choose, right, to add the Active Directory domain service role. Okay. And we're also going to add the Active Directory lightweight directory services role, right? Um, Now, to be completely honest, guys, um, I do not know which one enables the actual users and groups, right? In the actual like tree, domain tree on the server, right? That is something you will have to research. I'm going based off my notes after consulting a server admin that I work with because I wanted to talk in person. Of course, there's a lot of materials out there on the internet, but you can get confused whenever you don't know fundamentals about things. So what I like to do as an engineer within networking is ask experts face to face. Hey, let's spin up a VM and show me X, Y, and Z. Right. So we're going to install these two rows just to be safe. Okay. Because again, I know I will have access to users and computers, and we need that because we need the switch to be able to reference users, right? Whenever they're doing a radius call to the server. Okay. But also, speaking on that, we need this server to accept radius calls, right? So we're going to also install the role network policy and access services, aka NPS. Okay. So take a screenshot, take a pause. These are the three that we will be adding to make AAA work. Okay, let's do next. And again, of course, from what I just said earlier, if you guys know actually what role that we need just specifically to enable organizational unit, domain, so I can access, so you can access users, groups, what have you, and have that whole tree. Hey, comment, share. I love to learn. I love to learn something new. And if I was wrong with what I shared, you might be able to teach me something I can actually share with somebody else and learn for myself. So just keep that in mind, guys. I appreciate you. So right now, what we see on our screen, the Windows Server is installing the roles and features that I requested for it to install on this server. So let's give it a minute to go ahead and finish the install, to get through it. All right, shouldn't be too long. All right. Awesome. All right. Configuration required. Installation succeeded on SRV, aka server. Okay. So we're done. We're good to go. And it's telling us within here, and I don't want to rush, and I want you guys to take steps. It's telling us here, hey, Active Directory domain services, right? Additional steps are required to make this machine a domain controller, right? Promote this server to domain controller. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do that. All right. And we're going to create a new domain. And actually, I think we just answered our question that I had earlier as far as what role do we need so that we can go ahead and access it. It is Active Directory domain services. So we answered our own question. Okay. We're going to add a new forest, right? Because that's the deployment that we're doing. The functional level, of course, is going to stay. We're going to leave all things default. We're going to add the directory services restore mode password, right? And again, I'm not going to go into detail what all these things mean because I will admit I do not know the specifics about it, nor will I want to come off to comment on it. I am not a server expert. I implore you to look it up on your own if you are interested. Okay. Awesome. All right. Let's click next. Leave everything default. Now it's going to do a prerequisites check, right? Before it can promote it to the domain controller, it's going to make sure that we're good to go. Once it is confirmed, we'll be able to complete the installation. We'll be good to go. And you'll see errors if it doesn't pass the prerequisite checks, but we passed the prerequisite check. Let's go ahead and install. Drink a bit of water, guys. Give me a second. All right. It's finishing up. Yep. It's creating the directory partition, what have you. Awesome. Okay, awesome. Configuring the DNS server service on this computer. Okay. All right. And it may ask for a reboot, guys. Awesome. Right. So it's going to go ahead and do a reboot because, of course, the AD domain services was installed or removed. So let's go ahead and process that. Let's click close and go ahead and do it on its own. So let's give it time to do that. Um, and again, guys, for your labs, if you want to emulate this one, I love doing this step first. I actually ran through this lab 2 or 3 times, and I found that for optimal learning, go ahead and run through this step first. And I also want to give a shout out to getlabsdone.com. Again, I am not a server expert, but the guys over there had a great guide on how to set up Cisco AAA Radius with Windows MPS. Um, I have experience doing it, but I found that reviewing how to do it, they create a great way on how to do it whenever I was doing my review. Better than, and of course straight to the point, better than Cisco white papers have done it. And of course, Cisco white papers could be better. It can all technical documents can always get better. I know they can't include Windows, screenshots within their document sometimes, um, or if it's needed. I know they want to be agnostic whenever they're talking about specific protocols, what have you. But for our lab, and of course for your labs, please use this one. So shout out to them. Um, Mr. Sadiq has a lab about um, Safed, Safuddin Sadiq. He has the lab guide as far as how to set up Cisco AAA Radius with Windows FPS. Once I read his guide, everything started to come back to me, and we are good to go. Okay. So, and of course, during chapter 6, right, I want to take a pivot while the Windows server is still popping. I said there's an order of operations of doing things. Okay. Um, the book is going to, and of course, even within that little section, right, you'll learn, and of course, what you learn in the future is that, hey, I'm going to show you all things to do on the network side. You have to remember that. But for your career, right, what you want to do, right, there's a couple of order operations you want to do. You're always going to go ahead and create a local username and password, right, before you configure AAA, right? So the first thing we're going to do is do that, right? So we'll configure that, right? And before we do anything else, right? After we do that, right? If I'm a network professional, right, in charge of all things networks, I'm not going to configure anything else until I sync up with the server guy, or if I'm just a network guy that has to log into the servers or managed servers, maybe your system admin that logs into everything, um, or you're just a network engineer that maybe has to manage MPS, right? Then you just have to know what you're doing, right? And I would highly recommend configuring that first before you do anything on the switch. Okay. All right. So enough of me babbling. Um, let's go ahead and get back to the server. So we went ahead and we installed domain services, ADDS, right? And as you can see, the forest is now mentioning, right? That's a domain. The domain is Hyrule. Shout out to my favorite game, The Legend of Zelda, right? So we'll go ahead and type in a new password for our administrator account, our default administrator account. We'll go ahead and change that. Awesome. So what we're going to do here for prep is we are going to create a group called network admins, and we're going to create a user called we'll call them Link, right? Because again, I love The Legend of Zelda. And then we're going to go to uh network policy and services, and we'll go ahead and configure our policies there. Okay, so let's go here first, knock out some of the easy stuff. All right, and let's create a group. Let's go to new and let's go to group, and we'll call this admin. Okay, awesome. All right, so that's banged out. All right, so we got that set. Let's go ahead and add a user. Let's do test one. All right, or we'll call him Link. Yeah, yeah, we'll call him Link. There we go. Yep, we'll call him Link. We'll type in a password. Okay, awesome. All right, let's make him a member of that group. There we go. All right, so we see he's a member of network admins now. And let's put him in the proper place. And let's do some organization here. All right, let's add the group right there. All right, yeah, that feels better. Okay, so let's go here. Let's just double check. Okay, all right, so he's good to go. Awesome. All right, great. And let's verify that we have our group that we created. Network admins. Yep, that is right there. So we're good to go. All right, so let's minimize this and let's open up network policy server. Okay. So first thing we got to do, we have to go ahead and register network policy server with Active Directory. Okay. All right. And this is so it can go ahead and read Active Directory. So whenever it gets radius calls from the network, it can go and say, hey, I can check all these things in Active Directory that you're querying. Everything's good. You're good to go. All right. So first, we are going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and add a radius client, right? And we are going to add our core switch, right, to be the first radius client, right? There we go. Sorry, guys. Sometimes the VM locks up a little bit because the shift holds too long. A little bit of latency. There we go. All right. Port 12. Let's add the IP address. Yep, it's doing it again. Sorry about that, guys. Probably some delay. All right, there we go. All right, so 10 dot, oops, 4.6.25. We got that set. Let's go ahead and add in that password. And there's probably other settings here, like the template setting that we can use to optimize it. But we are doing a basic and simple setup, okay? Awesome. So we have that set up, all good to go. Let's go ahead and configure our policy, okay? All right. So now we are going to go to connection request policy, right? Here we can go ahead and set things to the point to where certain conditions meet so that a connection request is allowed to come into the server, okay? So we'll say allow Cisco um, device, and it's probably had to shift lock again. Yeah, I gotta figure that out. I gotta see what's going on. But for the project for the day, there we go. Give it some time. Oops, I think I lost it. Yeah, that darn shift key. There we go. All right. Whoops. There we go. That shift key is gonna be the definite. Allow Cisco devices. Right. All right. Awesome. Right. We're going to keep this pretty simple. Right. We are going to make the condition to be, hey, we're going to allow Cisco devices. This connection request only, accept requests coming from Cisco devices. Right. Boom. All right. We made it clear. Now we need to go ahead and set up our, oops, sorry. I don't know if you guys heard that. Hit something. But now we're going to set up our network policies. Okay. So as you guys see, we have our default. So similar to an ACL, right? You guys will learn about that later. We have an implicit deny, right? But we need to go ahead and add a exception to our ACL that allows request to come in. Okay. So let's go ahead. Let's right click. Let's say allow Cisco devices, right? You can call it something different. I want to go ahead and just keep it the same just for this lab. Okay. So the conditions that we wanted to meet, and we're going to specify here the group that we created. Okay. All right. And we're going to go for our network admins group. Okay. There we go. Awesome. So we got that set. Okay. And we are now going to say, hey, with that condition, right? Are you going to grant access or are you going to deny access, right? Or is access going to be determined by user dial-in properties which override MPS policies, so network policy server policies, right? We're going to go with access granted because we want to allow access, okay? All right. Um, this section, I want to be very clear, lab purposes only. The things that I select are no way, shape, or form recommended for the real world. Okay. For this lab, we're going to go ahead and configure authentication methods, and we're going to use unencrypted authentication. We just want to get this working. I just want to show you the concept of how external remote authentication works. Okay. It's giving me an error, of course. Love that about Windows. It's telling me that I'm choosing PAT, which is, of course, deemed as insecure authentication methods. We're going to leave it as is. That's okay. Now we need to make a few adjustments, right? So we're going to configure the settings and we need to change something within the radius attributes standards, okay? We're going to remove the frame protocol and we're going to change the service type. We're going to change it to be login, okay? All right. And then we're going to go to vendor specific, okay? And we need to reference the Windows Server um, to go ahead and reference Cisco, right? What we're going to do is put in that VSA, that attribute, and that attribute is shell priv level equals 15. I'm sure you guys can put two and two together. So what I'm saying is, hey, if somebody's trying to log into a shell, this access list is saying, hey, if anybody tries to log into the switch and they're within this group and it meets this specific condition for this network policy, give them privilege level 15 for our device. Okay? You can also make modifications and say, hey, show priv maybe one. Maybe you just want your knock, right? Just to look at, not execute a few things just to run show commands. You can do that as well. Okay. All right. So now that we have that set and we see the attribute, let's go ahead and click next, right? We check everything. We can go ahead and finish, right? So we have that and we have our Windows Server configured. Now let's go ahead and go to our device, okay? So I believe we went ahead and just for verification, we went ahead and configured both our internal and external interfaces. Whoops, sorry about that, guys. Now let's go ahead and configure our switch because that's who's going to be making that call to the radius server. Okay, let's go ahead and log in, right? And again, switch is no configuration on it, so we're going to give it a host name. Awesome. All right. And we're going to give it an IP address, right? And we're going to just use VLAN 1. Okay. Okay. And we're going to say 10.4. Oops, I'm sorry. Made a boo-boo. 6.4.6.2. Okay. We'll give it a /24. Keep it short and sweet and easy. Awesome. So we got that set up. So now what we need to do is we need to go ahead, set our default route. Awesome. Okay. And we're going to do a 6.4.6.1. Awesome. All right. And now that's set. Great. So now let's go ahead and move forward and let's start doing our AAA configuration so we can give you that example of external remote authentication. Okay. Before we do anything, we need to go ahead, as I said before, configure our backdoor, right? If all else fails and this network device is unable to reach the radius server, right? We need a way to still be able to get into the device. So we need to configure our local username and password, okay? So for our last lab, I'm gonna reference DeMarco, right? I'm gonna give him a privilege level of 15, right? I can, because again, we need to go ahead and tell the switch, hey, if DeMarco logs in, here's the privilege level. Okay. So DeMarco privilege 15, password, and we're gonna type in something simple. Okay. All right. So now that we got that set, we have our backdoor set. We can save that. The next following configuration, which will be AAA configurations, we are not going to save that until we test it. Okay. So first things first, we need to say AAA new model. What it does, it's enable new access control commands and functions for AAA. Okay, so let's do new model. Excellent, excellent. So we got that set. The first thing we need to do, whenever we're doing radius and we're configuring AAA, is we need to define who is our radius server. Okay, so let's do that. Radius server. I'm going to call this Win Server 01. Or let's keep it simple. WinServe 01. How about that? Okay. All right. So we need to go ahead and define, right? Define our IP address and the ports for this Windows server, right? Okay, we have the option to reference via IPv4, IPv6. For this, we're doing IPv4, right? And I'm going to put the IP address of the Windows server for our lab. So 10.4.6.25. Okay, and for the off port, right, I'm using an old switch. So the old switch uses old port numbers 1645 and 1646, right? The newer, um, at a high level, without getting into particulars about the IETF and a lot of these organizations that provide standards and what have you, um, it was changed to 1816. Um, I'm sorry, to 1812 and 1813. So let's go ahead and do that. All port is going to be 1812. The accountant port is going to be 1813. Awesome. We have that set, right? And then we're going to go ahead and set the key. This key is going to be the shared secret that we configured whenever we were in the network policy server and we configured that shared secret. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and put that here. Awesome. Awesome. So we got that set. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and configure a um, AAA group, right? Server group, right? For Radius, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Group, and we'll say server. And of course, it gives us options. We're going to say Radius, and we're going to call it Radius Group. Or we'll be cool. We'll say Rad Group. There we go. All right. And then we'll reference our server, right? By name of how we stated here. So we'll say Win server. Whoops. Whoops. Okay. There we go. All right. So we got Win server 01. That's set. Awesome. Now we need to go ahead and tell our switch with the AAA commands what to do, how to act on it, what's your primary, what's your fallback. Okay. So AAA is authentication, authorization, and accounting. First, we need to tell the switch, right, how to authenticate, right? And we're going to do this by using the authentication keyword, right? So we'll say authentication, right? We'll have access to the authentication perimeters, right? And we're going to say we want to go ahead and affect, set the authentication list for logins. Okay? So we'll go ahead and type login, right? And we're gonna have options. We can say the authentication list, or we can say default authentication list. Okay? And we have plenty of options, right? And we're gonna say group, right? We're gonna say, because of course us using group says server group, right? We're gonna have different words, what have you. And since we defined a radius group, we can go ahead and say radius, right? But of course, we want to include um, our local username and password, that DeMarco account. So we're going to type local here. So it has a fallback just in case it needs, we need to go ahead and backdoor ourselves back into the switch. All right. So authentication is done. Now we need to tell the switch, hey, once authenticated, what is this user authorized to do? Reach out to Radius to to give the special permissions, right? So let's do authorization, okay? Exec, default, right? Group, right? We're going to reference grade radius, and we're going to say if authenticated. Okay, so it has to be authenticated. All right. The next few lines, we're going to just go ahead and put in commands for accounting, right? Because we want every change that is made on this switch recorded on a AAA server. Okay. All right. So we'll do send, right? So we can send a stop record, right, to that radius server. Awesome. And we'll do accounting. And we'll do exec, default. We'll do start stop, group, radius. Boom. And we're good to go. Okay. Let's add two more lines. There we go. Awesome. Session ID and come. All right. So last but not least, because again, we're doing this on the switch. We're not doing this on a router, right? With a switch, we have VLANs. We configured the IP address on a VLAN. We need to tell the switch, right? Hey, use this VLAN where I have this specific IP address configured, because that is how the IP address that's configured on said VLAN is referenced within the radius clients within the MPS server role. Okay, so we'll say IP radius source interface. Okay, VLAN 1. Okay, that is all the commands we need. Now, once we have all that configured, now we can test to see if we can log in. Okay, our test account is called link. So let's log in. We type the word link and we will type in his password and see if that works. Works. Oops. Failure. Okay. Let's see if it works. Let's make sure everything is good to go. Let's see if we get another failure. If it's failing, we can check the server too. All right, let's double check the server, see what's going on. Okay. Oops. With the sticky keys again. There we go. Well, let's check Event Viewer. Event Viewer helps out a lot. Um, there we go. Well, let's blow it up a little bit. Let's. You know what I think it is? Just to be safe. Let's just to be safe. Let's go ahead and Probably this shift. Yep, probably this shift. I hold shift too long. I got heavy hands. Okay. Okay. All right. Fly. Okay. IP address is good. That awesome. So let's see if it works. And maybe we, gotta reconfigure something. It is communicating, so something is working, right? And let's just double check. Maybe we just misconfigured something. So we'll check that in. Okay, so let's log in with DeMarco's account. There we go. All right, so we are good to go. Let's check our config. Let's take a look and see what we're missing. 9 times out of 10, we're probably missing. Okay, okay. We have our server group, server name, and server one. All that's good. Okay, awesome. And the key is admin123. Excellent. Excellent. That's working. Everything's good, right? We have login default, group radius local. We have our authorization, stop record, authentication failure, default connection. Awesome. So everything looks good. Let's make sure we still have our source. Do we have our source command? Oh, yes, we do. So we have our source command. Everything looks good. Let's be sure. Okay. Let's let's see if we're just getting errors, right? Um, search 6.25. All right. And there we go. Account was successfully logged in. Okay. Which account was this? There we go. Awesome. Okay. So, okay, let's refresh and let's do this. Okay. Awesome. And let's double check to make sure we don't have. Awesome. Okay. And let's to be safe, let's go ahead and add another user. All right, let's call him test one. Okay. Because 9 times out of 10, it's probably our shift button. Yeah, I have a sticky keys shift issue. It's a layer 8 issue, more so on me. So, okay. All right. And let's add them to that group. There we go. All right. So we have them added. Let's test it. That's it. Test one. See if he's able to get it. Not responding. I'm probably having connection issues. There we go. And let's try it again. And maybe it's possible I need to reboot this as well. Maybe reboot the server. It's possible. We'll see. We will see. We did make a couple of changes. Okay, so let's go ahead. An invalid. Ah, there we go. So you see our errors here. We received an invalid radius client IP message from 6.4.6.2. So, and here's our mistake. We have the our client is configured as this server. It's not configured as a switch. So let's go ahead and fix that. All right. Um, I want, I like to make my labs as raw as possible. If I make a mistake, I like to go try to find it and troubleshoot as long as it doesn't go too far down the rabbit hole. Okay. So we have that change, we have that set, we have it good to go. Now, if we use that username link, we try to log in, and now it should work. And of course, we have to make sure that it's correct. There we go. All right, let's try it again. There we go. So link, voila. We are in. We are inside the switch. We are good to go. Again, we have privilege level 15. We're able to do anything. That is how you secure user mode access with external remote authentication. Again, at the highest of technical levels, I implore you guys to dig deep. This is at the CCNA level. CCNP, it gets real fun. CCIE, it gets real fun. To know the details and know what every command does, how you can modify it and tune and optimize it for your environment. Okay. And that's all, folks. I'll see you in the next one.